Good morning. Good to be here. And I add my warm welcome to you if you're here for the first time, you're here with friends or just visiting. Do you know, I've been here a long time. Not physically here, right on this stool, but part of the church for a long, long time. And in fact, it was about 30 years ago, pretty much this month, that I became a Christian. In my front room, at home. There was no other church involvement or anything like that at 356 Derham Road, house on the corner with the roundabout there. And I was given this by a friend who was living with us at the time, my friend Tim. And it's my first ever Bible. 30 years old. What are you saying, Chris? You having a joke then? Something to share with the class? No, I'm kidding. But, you know, it's my first ever Bible, and it's a bit tatty. I didn't just stamp on it to make it look good, like I have actually read it. But I remember getting this, and at times I remember, this is before we'd been part of a church, or never been part of a church in my life. And I remember going downstairs to Jean sometimes after reading bits of it, going, this is amazing, look what it says here. And but there were other times, though, where I found it hugely perplexing. Anyone else? I hope so. I doubt I'm the only person in the room that finds some parts of the Bible perplexing and raises questions. And I remember reading the book of Genesis for the first time, and boy, did I have a lot of questions. Incredible story, incredible stories. But I had loads of questions, and I started reading stuff on it, and I got down a few kind of side alleys, to be honest, rabbit trails that I would suggest you don't go down, but we can talk about that if you want to come and chat about that. But it's the first book in the Bible, so it's going to be the easiest one to find. Okay, so this morning, turn to Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to read it out in a minute. But before we do, this first book of the Bible, we've called this series From Eden to Egypt, and we have unashamedly nicked it from this book title, because it's called From Eden to Egypt. We thought, that's just really good. Why reinvent the wheel? And this is the kind of book we're recommending for this series as well, by a chap called Alex Duke. It's a whole of Genesis, like a guided tour. You know, I regularly say a good book is like a good tour guide. And Alex Duke is a good tour guide, particularly if you're first time to the book of Genesis. You're going, what is this all about? And how do I get my head around this? It's really well written. He quotes the American Office, if that's helpful, if you're going to buy it, in it. Let's give you a flavour but it's really good. He's a thoughtful guy and a very good writer, and it's a very engaging read. But I would recommend that. And also this one, actually, we recommended this before, How to Read the Bible Book by Book. You know, young people, if you're youth or whatever, but actually it doesn't matter how old you are, honestly, this is a brilliant place to start if you're new to the Bible. Just gives you a little framework for how you read each book and things to watch out for. So highly, highly recommend How to Read the Bible for all it's worth. That's the only book recommendations I am giving today. But that one's on, the Genesis one is on sale at the back. I don't know how much, you haven't got a clue. But anyway, it's worth buying. So yeah, and after reading lots of books and reading Genesis, I guess many times really, I still don't have all the answers. So if you've kind of come thinking, oh great, we're going to kind of do Genesis, I'm going to know everything by the end of this series, well, you're going to leave disappointed. I'm sorry. If you've come asking questions about how long it took God to create things, is it literal days, is it intelligent design, is it theistic evolution, again, you are going to be disappointed today, because I ain't going to touch on any of those things. And you'll see maybe why as we go through. So after deeply disappointing you, I'm going to ask Nikki to come and read this out for us. And as Nikki comes up, I just want you to be thoughtful in the way we engage with this. On the screen should come a little table thing. There we go. Now, that's setting out the structure of Genesis, right? So you've got these days that correlate with each other, one for filling, forming and filling, okay? So this gives you a little idea that what we're coming to in the text of Genesis isn't just kind of a normal sort of narrative story type thing. There's something more to it. And I want you to, sorry, Nikki, making you stand there for a bit. I should have said. I wanted to kind of ask yourself things. Look out for repeated words, phrases, the flow of it, the structure of it. Notice in yourself what questions rise that you have, and even how you feel about hearing this story, okay? It's a lot to do, isn't it? You come to church, you chill out, and you've got something to do, okay? So, Nikki, come and read it out to us. I'm booming a bit. I don't know why, but it's probably me.
I'm reading from the NASB, starting from Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, going through to chapter 2, verse 3. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning, one day. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." God made the expanse and separated the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so. God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening and there was morning, a second day. Then God said, "Let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear," and it was so. God called the dry land earth, and gathering of the waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seeds, and fruit trees on the earth bearing fruit after their kind with seed in them," and it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit with seed in them after their kind, and God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning, a third day. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for the signs, and for seasons, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth," and it was so. God made the two lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. And he made the stars also. God placed them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. Then God said, "Let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens." God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." There was evening and there was morning, a fifth day. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after their kind," and it was so. God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Then God said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed. It shall be food for you, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth which has life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their hosts. By the seventh day God completed his work which he had done, and he had rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made.
Thank you, Nikki. So, maybe you're new to that, maybe that's the first time you've heard it. Again, you don't have to answer this, but I wonder what questions arise. I wonder what feelings there were. I wonder kind of just how you felt about that. And like I said, I'm not going to get to kind of some of the things that I've said about, because people hold different views on this whole thing about how long was it? Is it long day, short day, literal, theistic evolution, things like that. Just the only thing to say on that is this, is that we've got to hold our different views well, in much grace with one another, when we differ over different things, different interpretations, and so on. But like I said, I'm not going to say much more on that. My aim today, though, isn't to give you all the answers or anything, but hopefully to give you a bit of a framework. Maybe you've got one already that you think clearly about Genesis, but I want to give you a bit of a framework about you might approach Genesis. And I want to, any golf players among us? There's a few. There's Tim. Tim, he's very good apparently, is Tim. Don't worry, I'm not going to get you up, mate, because I'm just not. But do you know what it is? You know when you tee up in golf, there we go, got my blue tack, there we go, golf. I haven't left myself enough room. It's like this, okay? And you tee up like that. Tim, do you like my swing? Is that all right? I'm not going to. Jean's right in front of me. I'm not going to do that. Right, I want you to remember this. Teeing up is a metaphor for what? Getting ready, setting the stage for something else, isn't it? You tee something up for the next thing. So you smack your ball down the fairway, it tees it up for the next shot. In some ways today, I'm going to tee things up for Tom next week because we're doing Genesis 1 in 2 parts. So I want to tee him up. Hopefully, it'll be a helpful place where the ball lands for you to pick it up for the next shot into Genesis chapter 1 because there's shed loads in there. But in many ways, the chapter that we're reading, Genesis 1, 1 to 2, 3, is its own section, right? If you look at it, it's its own bit. It's like a prologue, the beginning, the introduction to a book. That's what it is. It tees up Genesis 2 to 11, because Genesis 1 to 11 is really its own section as well, and that tees up Genesis 12 to 50. 12 is when we get to Abraham, and we land in Egypt. From Eden to Egypt, we go from creation to a coffin. Do you know that? In the beginning, God made Joseph in a coffin right at the end of Genesis. From creation to a coffin, from Eden to Egypt. And Genesis itself tees up what? Well, it tees up this book called the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. It kind of sets those up because they come as a package. And if you try and interpret kind of one on its own, you're going to kind of misplace it a bit. But then the Torah does what? Well, the Torah tees up the rest of the Old Testament. It sets it up, and you start to understand what is going on in the rest of the Old Testament in light of what is written in the first 5 books. That's the Old Testament. What does the Old Testament tee up? The New Testament. And it tees up Christ and all he's done, and the church. And finally in Revelation, what do we get? It tees up the new creation. Creation. Tees up the whole Old Testament story. Christ coming, new creation, okay? So I'm going to tee up Genesis, but remember that it's 3 things I want us to think about here. The first is think big when we come to Genesis. The second thing is look back. And the third thing is see beyond, all right? Fairly simple to remember. Think big, look back, see beyond when we come to read this text. So think big story. Those that were at the Christmas Carol concert, I talked about this in terms of we're all living a story, every single one of us, and I haven't found any writer who disagrees with this yet. It doesn't matter what they believe. No, not Christian writers. I'm saying any writer would say that thinker would say we are living a story. Every culture and every person has their own origin stories. That's what the word Genesis means, beginnings, origins. I'm going to move that. Gene catch. Good catch. Yeah, give her a round of applause. That was pretty good, Johnny. That was a son-in-law. Getting in the good books, eh, Johnny? So every culture has its origin stories. There's a couple of thick books that this chap called, I can't pronounce his name probably, Yuval Noah Harari or something like that. And the first one is called Sapiens, and the second one's called Homo Deus. But anyway, the point is, at the beginning of Sapiens, which is what you are, you're a Homo sapien, he writes at the beginning there, this is the beginning of a story that he goes on to tell, the story of human history. And so everyone thinks that we're living a story, everyone has an origin story, and in Genesis we see the origin of the world, the universe, humanity, civilization, and Israel. It is a huge, vast story covering eons of time and space, all right? This is a big story. Stories don't get any bigger, quite frankly. And we see in this story as well, we see human beings, we see us, Homo sapiens. We see both the best in people like Joseph, and if you're new to the Bible, maybe you've heard of Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, Andrew Lloyd Webber made famous. He's towards the end of Genesis, but gets a lot of coverage. There's a reason for that. Oh, by the way, we're not doing 1 to 50 in this series, we're doing 1 to 11. And then we're going to pick up some more later on, all right? Just so you know, there's a lot to cover here. But we see the best in people like Joseph, really. But we also see the worst of humanity as well. We see some massive failures. But yet people God used and got hold of. And so you see God's grace shot through it all, God's patience, God's love, God's endurance with us, as it were, because he loves us and he wants to see us succeed, as it were. So it's a big story, think big book. It's part of the Bible, as we've said. It tees up all these different things. Genesis does, as I said already. That it speaks about this new creation, this almost new Eden. When you go to the end of the Bible and you read Revelation, you see images like the trees, the tree of life, and rivers, and this city garden thing. And it's like, these are related. The Bible is one massive story from beginning to end. And it speaks about how I think we all desire our own Eden, as it were. I think we do. I think we do genuinely. Who loves fairy tales? Love a fairy tale? There's a reason we do, because it resonates with something, the happily ever after. Do you long for a happily ever after? That one day, or maybe it'll be okay. Maybe life's really bad and you just long. Maybe, and what can happen to us is that when things are really tough, it is that, it's just never going to happen, is it? That's a story to believe. This story that, it's never going to be happily ever after, so we can grow cynical. We can grow disappointed, whatever it might be. But I think we long for it. And this might be a strange thing to say, but I think we long for it. When I drive around and I look at people's gardens, I don't mark them or anything or put anything on, score them on TripAdvisor or anything. But I look at them sometimes, you see these kind of perfectly trimmed gardens with really nice hedges. And I'm not knocking that. I think gardens are beautiful. And actually, I think it is a good thing because I think it shows something of the longing of the human heart for this kind of Edenic, however you pronounce it, sort of place that we want in our houses and home and try and keep evil out of it. It's kind of why we lock our doors, isn't it? We want to keep evil out. We want to have this kind of perfect place. But it's not, is it? It's not perfect. We know that, these little Edens that we have. But I think it says something about the longing of the human heart. Big story, big book. And then there's big questions. Now, there's different types of questions we ask, and I'm going to put this in two. One is, I think, we ask, what do I call them? In front of us questions. Very succinct. In front of us questions. And what I mean by those questions are the questions that we just ask every day. You might be having going through your head, why did I come this morning? You might have going through your head, I wonder what I'm going to have for lunch. Or it might be something more serious, but I wonder what the results are going to be this week. They're in front of us questions. They might be about our family, might be about our work, whatever. They're immediate things. They are important questions. But there's also questions that I think we all ask, but maybe, I don't know whether we give enough time to them or not. But they are what I call here framing questions. The in front of us questions are the ones in the picture, if you like, but the framing questions of life. And what the framing questions do, and we'll get to what they are, they inform the everyday questions, the in front of us questions. They inform how we answer those questions, how we live in the world. That's why the framing questions are really important. And like I said, we all ask them. We ask questions like, where have we come from? How did we get here? These are questions of origin. We ask questions like, what are we? What is a human being? What is Toby? What am I? What does it mean to be human? And with the rise of AI, we are asking that question all the more. Is it purely that they can perform certain tasks? There's a functional element here? Or is a human being more than that? That's questions of identity. We ask big questions like, what's life all about? Meaning, morality, why am I here? Question of meaning and purpose. We ask, well, what is wrong with humanity? Again, we've prayed for the war in Ukraine. Well, what is going on? Something is wrong, isn't it? We're a bit broken. We're a bit busted up again. I think most people agree. And therefore, how should we live? They're questions of morality. And then what happens when I die? Questions of destiny. Origins, identity, meaning, purpose, morality, and destiny. These are the framing questions of life. And we all have a kind of story that goes with them. And maybe you've never thought about that story. Maybe it's a story you just inherited from your parents, from your family, from your culture, from your community. That's generally where we get our idea of this big story from. It informs us. In our culture, I wonder if one of the stories is, well, you'll never really know. So do your best, be kind, be a good person, however you define good. And do whatever you want, as long as it makes you happy, as long as you don't hurt other people. I mean, there's tons in there that you could go, well, hang on, what about that and what about that? And how does that all fit together? But when you come to Genesis, which begins to address these questions of identity, origins, meaning, purpose, morality, destiny, remember, big story, big book, and it's going to address these things, okay? So that's the first thing, is what? Think big, one of you heard. Brilliant. Second thing is look back, okay? What I mean by this is go back and put yourselves in the shoes of Mr. and Mrs. Israelite. I think I've got an original Polaroid dated around the 14th century, BC. Do you like that? And Mr. and Mrs. Israelite, they're having their dinner party on the 5th day of Kislev. And like I say, this is an original. And what I want us to do is use our imagination, kind of, not just our imagination on its own, like, oh great, I can pretend whatever I want about Genesis. No, an informed imagination, okay? And put ourselves in their shoes, asking ourselves what their conversation would have been, what their reaction to hearing Genesis, because they were the ones that would have heard it for the first time, and it was written for, how would they have responded? What would they have said? And let me just say a couple of things before we get into their shoes. First thing is this: I believe firmly that what is written in Genesis would have made sense to them, the first hearers, when they heard it. I just think it would. I think Moses used language and ways of communicating to the audience he was writing to, things that would trigger similarities and things that they would get. See, all communication requires accommodation, and not a house. Accommodation, as in to accommodate yourself to a person. You do not speak to an adult the same way you speak to a 3-year-old, hopefully. Don't do that, okay? Because you'll confuse the 3-year-old and patronize the adult. Not good. So basically, all communication requires us to tailor what we're saying, even the language. If I stood up here and spoke in my, I don't know, my fluent Croatian, I don't know why I've used that, but you know, I can't. But you'd all be going, well, unless you understand Croatian, you're going to kind of go home thinking, well, I didn't understand a blimmin' word of that. That was pointless. I did not accommodate myself to the context and the people I'm talking to. Jean, my lovely wife here, when we used to live in France many moons ago, and we had a gardener, not our gardener. He was the gardener of the house we were working in for this very rich man, so he could afford a gardener. And the garden was called Laurent. And I remember Jean saying one day to Laurent, something, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she said at the end of it, so Bob's your uncle. To a French man who didn't speak hardly any English. So Laurent goes, Bob? is my uncle. Sorry to offend any French out there. He didn't get it because he didn't understand the context. Now, how many of you know what Bob's your uncle means? Come on. A good chunk of us know what Bob's your uncle means. If you're going to say it in French, what would you say? Et voilà. There you are. That's kind of what Bob's your uncle means, yeah? But context matters, that knowing who you're speaking to matters, otherwise we miss the point. And it is like that with Genesis sometimes. And God uses familiar cultural references, language, symbols, metaphor, narrative through Genesis that help the original hearers grasp what it means. And that's why we need to get back in their shoes a little bit. And the second thing is this, before we get into their shoes, is there are different ways of communicating truth. Different ways of communicating an event or something that happens in our day, or reality itself. You can say things in different ways. So I'll give you an example. If I said to you, it was proper Baltic on hump day. Any young people get that? Kit gets it, Mike gets it, teachers get it. Well, I mean, you're younger than me, but I was thinking of the youth. I'm sorry, Kit. But, any youth get that? Come on, proper Baltic. Or brick. It's brick. Well, I'm really down with the kids here, aren't I? I'm going over their heads. Look, okay, we won't go what it means, but that's slang, all right? You'll understand what it means in a minute. It was proper Baltic on hump day. Second way of talking is this, that's slang. It was freezing earlier in the week. I get what proper Baltic means now. It's really cold. That's ordinary language. And I say it's freezing, it doesn't mean it was exactly 0 degrees centigrade. If you say, a beautiful sunrise today, wasn't there, Toby? And I said, well, technically the sun doesn't rise. What are you going to do? You're going to look at me and go, you idiot, do you not understand the concept of that metaphor and what that means? It's ordinary language. Third way is this. If I said, in Norwich at 6 a.m., because I read it on this, the temperature, at 6 a.m. on Wednesday, the 28th of January, 2025, it was between 2 and 3 degrees centigrade. What sort of language is that? Scientific, analytical language. So we've got slang, ordinary language, and scientific. Now, Robert, Mr. Curry, where are you? You're going to come and read something for us. Come and read something. All yours, mate. Oh, you need a microphone, don't you? Translation. Broader Scottish.
Bitter chill it was. The owl, for all his feathers, was a cold. The hare limped trembling through the frozen grass, and silent was the flock in woolly fold. Numbed were the beadman's fingers.
Brilliant. Thank you. Give me a round of applause. Thank you ever so much. Did you understand with the Scots accent? That was a poem by Keats. And he wasn't Scottish, Keats, but I think poems should be read by people who've got a Scottish accent. I don't know why. Is that wrong? I don't think it's wrong, is it? Anyway, it's beautiful. What sort of language was that? Poetic. What is it describing? A really cold day, a freezing morning. Do you get it? It's communicating exactly the same thing as the scientific language, as the analytical, the ordinary language, and the slang, but just in a different way. And poetry has this way, and I'm not saying, by the way, that Genesis is pure Hebrew poetry. I'm not saying that. But poetry has a way of not just communicating what it is, but how it feels. Poetry draws you into the experience of something, okay? Still communicating exactly the same reality. Did anyone know what a beadsman was? I didn't know until this morning when I looked it up. It's a pensioner. That isn't why I asked Robert to read it out. Sorry, mate. Anyway, apparently you have to pray. It's a pensioner that has to pray for their benefactor or something like that. But anyway, so the point is, we don't know these things unless someone else says, hey, this is what this means. So let's get into it. The first thing I think our Israelite friends would say, sitting around their table, enjoying their flatbreads, would be very creative, very poetic language. It's not quite Hebrew poetry, was it, though? It's something else. It's richer, but there's this form and then structure to it, these 3 days, like I said, of forming and filling. I think they'd have sat round that table and said to each other, oh, did you notice the number 7? Did you notice the number 7? It's repeated throughout, not literally 7, the number, but it says, and it was so, 7 times. God made 7 times. God saw it was good 7 times, and all in 7 days. The number 7 in Hebrew, in that culture, meant completeness, something that is finished. It's complete, it's almost perfect. There's this completeness image. If you think about it in the New Testament with Jesus, where he mentions the number 7, do you know where that is? It's where Peter comes to him. Yeah, forgiveness. And Peter says to him, look, hey, how many times do I have to forgive someone who keeps kind of really blowing it with me? 7 times? And Jesus is like, good question, Peter. How about 77? Or some translations say 70 times 7. That would have blown Peter's mind. It's like, what, hang on, isn't 7 enough? That's complete, isn't it? He said, no. Wherever there's repentance, there's always forgiveness. Always. And it's lavish. Grace abounds to us. It's complete. And when we understand what that word means, 7, suddenly that text itself is enriched to us because we're like, oh, wow. There is total, complete forgiveness for us in Christ. Isn't that good news? I think that's good news. But that's the first thing I think they'd say, that it's very creative, it's very poetic. And it gives us a little bit of a clue about how we might read it. You see, like Keats's poem, if we came to that with the kind of question of, I don't know, how do I fix my exhaust on my car? Well, that text isn't going to answer that question, is it? And it's the same with Genesis. Sometimes we come with it with our questions already formed that we want to know, scientific 21st century questions. I'm not saying it's got nothing to say. I'm just saying I don't think that's why it was written, to answer for us where we're at currently in our scientific understanding in 21st century. And so if we come to a text and try and pull answers out of it that it was never intended to ask, we're only going to end up potentially with wrong answers, I think. Maybe disagree with that, have a think about it, chew it over in your life groups. So very creative. The second thing is, I think they'd have said, ooh, in a Hebrew accent, obviously. It reminded me of the other creation stories that we've heard. Things like Gilgamesh and Enuma Elish. These are stories that were written around sort of somewhere between 2000 and 1000 BC, something like that. They're incredibly violent. You know, if you want to read a bit of a gory story, have a little read of these stories. You've got one of them, you've got Marduk and Tiamat. And Marduk ends up basically using Tiamat's body parts, sorry if anyone's squeamish, to uphold the sky and things like that, right? And then there's another epic around that time called the Atrahasis epic, which some would say is the most similar, if you like, many similarities with Genesis. And that combines elements from this Enuma Elish and the Gilgamesh, right? And you can read these things, you can find them online, you can have a read of them. Anyway, in this epic, I'm going to try and sum up the Atrahasis epic. The problem is you've got God doing all the work, right? God is digging all the rivers, and he's kind of getting there with his spade, and he's getting the river Tigris, and he's digging the river Tigris, and he's getting really tired. Well, it's not just him, there's a number of gods, right? They're doing that. So the solution, what's the solution to getting very tired as a god and digging rivers? Is what? Delegation. Delegate it, let's make some younger gods, or some sort of lower gods, as it were, and we're going to make the youth, wherever you are, do all the work. Okay? That's what adults do. They make the young people do all the work. Okay? So the big gods, the great gods are making the lower gods do all the work. But the problem is after around 3,600 years, it's a long time of digging, they got very tired as well. So the younger gods are now knackered and can't do it. And they're kind of complaining, saying, this is killing us, we're worn out, we can't do this anymore. What are we going to do? We're going to kind of revolt against the great gods, have a bit of a battle with them and see what happens. Solution is they don't end up having that battle, thankfully. I think if I got this right. What they do is this. They agree to mix one slaughtered god with clay, bake in an oven for 40 minutes on gas mark 5, and bingo, humans. I used a little bit of creative license there, you can tell. But that is kind of what happens. And the humans are created as what? To do the jobs that the gods don't want to do. So they're slaves to dig the rivers and so on and so forth, and also to provide food for the gods. Okay? You got me? Are you with me so far on this story? Imagine these gods, they've invented humans basically to be like a Deliveroo service. Okay? They're delivering food to the gods and providing for their needs and doing their work. The problem is the humans are a noisy lot and the gods are falling asleep. They want to fall asleep, but they're being kept awake, by the humans. So they're fed up with them, so the solution, wipe them out. Guess what they wipe them out with? Flood. Problem is, there's no humans, no Deliveroo service for the gods. So they're starving now, and they think, blow, we made a bit of a mistake on that one. But thankfully, one god, Enki, who had given a dream to Atrahasis, that's where he comes in, builds a boat and survives. That's the tablet that it's written on, and that's a picture of Atrahasis coming out of the boat onto dry land in that story. Now, like I said, I'm not saying Genesis is dependent on these stories, all right? I'm just saying that there is similarities. You read about in all of these stories pretty much about the divine beings, gods, sea monsters, separation of waters, creation, humans, flood, and boat. And so when we read about similar things in Genesis, it shouldn't panic us. It just means that I think God is accommodating himself to the audience in language and forms and message that they would have understood and grasped. Because the main point here isn't that there's similarities. The main point, actually, there are massive differences between those texts and this story that Nikki read out to us. Huge differences. So I think they'd have sat around the table and gone, yeah, there's similarities, but there's massive differences. First thing is this, is that what do we see in these stories? Well, God's kind of calm in Genesis. He's pretty chilled. It's not like there's a big battle of the gods going on, vying for position and who's going to create, and I'm going to create out of your body parts and all that sort of stuff. No, it's just pretty chill. It's peaceful. There's something I think they'd have noticed that. This is different. The world is not a fruit of violence from gods. Violence comes later, and it's humanity that brings that in, not the gods. Second thing is this, I think that they'd noticed, that God doesn't fall asleep on the job. Their gods got tired and fell asleep. Did you notice it this morning, that psalm that Dan read out, Psalm 121? The Lord who does what? Neither sleeps or slumbers. God doesn't fall asleep on the job. Oh, you see how that enriches that? They'd have read that and gone, oh, yeah, these other gods are like that. This God is not like that. He doesn't fall asleep. He does not grow weary and tired. It says that in Isaiah. And Elijah, if you know that story, when he's kind of up in this confrontation with these other gods and priests and so on, he says they're sort of dancing around trying to get their God to come and do some stuff. And Elijah's like, well, is he asleep? And you understand why now? Because they believe their gods got tired. Yeah? So there's a huge difference here. It's only one God, not many gods battling for position. No rivals, not local, not limited, not a tribal God. This is the God of all the nations. This is why the early Christians got in trouble. Because their Lord, that they called Lord in Christ, was Lord of all, not just Lord of their little sect, as it were. He was Lord of all. And that's why they got in trouble. That's why they were killed, when we confess Jesus as Lord. He has not got any rivals. Marcus has given me an extra point this morning. He's the God who fights for you. The God who fights for you. These other gods fight against each other and enslave you. This is a God that fights for you. Another one is this, I think they'd notice the difference, is when you start reading about the sun, the moon. And did you notice when it said about the sun and the moon? Oh, and also the stars. It's like, what? Just like a side thing, the stars, incredible. I think we've got some pictures, actually. Can we have these pictures up? So this is, I can't remember what they all are. I think that's a spider's eye or a fly's eye. Does anyone know what that is? I've got a vague idea. I do remember, I did look it up. It's something to do with a cell, actually, the human cell. This is kind of a micro level. What's that one? Is that something They're incredible. Anyway, just think about it. This is our world, right? This is the microscopic, tiny world that God made. What's the second slide here? I'm going to broaden out a little bit. Just beautiful, isn't it? Our world. It's stunningly beautiful. Why have I put a horse there? It's not because I really like horses. But I remember reading once, a guy called G.K. Chesterton said, imagine you saw a horse for the first time coming over the hill. That's why kids are so in wonder of things. I think it's the first time they see these things. It's like, whoa, look at that! And we lose a bit of that, don't we, as we grow up? But horses are incredible. Something about the world that it looks like it's designed. It just does. And the next one, this is kind of right out, Psalm 19. That's some nebula. You can tell I'm not a scientist, can't you? That's Earth, I know that. That's definitely Earth in the middle. The heavens declare the glory of God. The sky displays his handiwork. This is a different God. This is the God who's made all things, who doesn't make creation out of some stuff that's already there. This is a God who creates out of nothing, who speaks the word into things. God said and God made. This is a different God to the God that they've been surrounded by. He points us away from these lesser gods that would enslave us, that would dehumanize us, these kind of earthbound gods that we have. When we live for things like money and fame and ourselves and nice houses and nice gardens, they're fine to have, but they're not the main deal, and they will enslave you if they are the thing that you really run after. And humans as well, they're not created to be slaves of God, to deliver their food or anything like that. There's dignity. They're stewards to creation, steward creation wisely, and I'm sure Tom will unpack some of this stuff. Made in the image of God and to reflect God into this world, into this good world. It speaks about our value, that God doesn't need us. He doesn't make us to do his jobs. He doesn't need us to do anything. Again, that be still. Marcus, you've done a really good job, mate. Well done. We didn't talk before, but be still. You can't do it. Be still. Know that he's God. He loves us. He doesn't need us. He wants us. Our identity, we are who we are in relation to him. You know, that's who we are. We look for identity, don't we? Who am I? That's a big thing nowadays. Who am I? I think part of who we are is who we are into relation to others people. I'm part of my identity as a father, as a husband, as a friend. But I'm also a child of God. Part of my identity is in relation to the ultimate other. I think that's how we come to know who we really are. And we know God loves us because of the cross. We've been singing about it this morning. He's the God that can bring order out of chaos. I think we sang that this morning as well. Just as he did at creation, he can do it in our lives because he's done it because of the cross, which is the kind of worst thing possible, as it were, the worst dehumanizing possible on the cross that God brings life out of in his resurrection, and he can do it in your life now, today. He can do that. And I could go on. And it's here we start to see beyond creation to Christ. And I'm just going to read out John chapter 1. And in light of everything that has been said, just think about these words and where almost creation has its pinnacle. John chapter 1, verse 1. These might be really familiar to you or brand new. And notice the similarity. In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning. Genesis, in the beginning. And the Word was with God, and the Word spoken was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being through him. And apart from him, that's Christ, nothing came into being that has not come into being, that has come into being. Do you get it? Ultimately, this Genesis story, it points us beyond those first few pages to Christ, to the one who is there at the beginning, the very Word of God, now made visible to us in flesh. It says the Word became flesh. That same living Word, Christ. This is who we're saying Christ is. Not just a good man, not just a kind of wise teacher. We're saying he is God with us. Huge claim. We're saying that same God with us, Emmanuel, is the one who hung on the cross, the one who made the human body, was broken in his body on a cross for us because we brought in violence and evil and sin. That's what we're saying. It's a huge story. It's a massive story. But actually, it's a story. There is incredible coherence to it from beginning to end, even though it was written over many centuries, the Bible. It's an incredible, rich narrative that we don't get just to read about, but we get to become part of as well. There's a quote I just want to end on. It says, our generation waits for a story that eclipses them and yet includes them. A story that makes sense of every other story. Our generation waits for a story that eclipses them yet includes them. A story that makes sense of every other story. And it's a story that we can live in and are invited into even for the first time. I'd like to invite the band back up, please. And like I said at the beginning, my aim was to sort of tee things up, hopefully. Think big, look back, see beyond. You know, we're going to be looking forward to these next few weeks as we start to unpack some of these huge questions that Genesis starts to attend to and helps us explore and understand the story that if you're a Christian, you live in, that you're part of. And if you're not, I just want to encourage you. Think about what story you are living. Is it big enough? Does it make sense of the world as it is? Does it make sense of your experience? Does it make sense of both beauty and tragedy? Those two things. Because the gospel does. This story with Jesus at the center does. Should we stand and I'd like to pray for us?